Dave? I just want to make sure all my
Yes.
colleagues are. And I'm
Yes,
Joe.
I'm here, Jeff.
Yes, I'm here. Morning.
Rob?
Yep, I'm here. Good morning.
Okay, I'm going to rise and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the
Of
flag
the United
of the
States.
United States of America,
republic for which
To the
one
republic
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. I will note that all board members are present via teleconferencing, which is permitted. I must remind you that unfortunately, as of December 1st, we're not going to be able to do this apparently. So we'll see what happens. But I'm glad that everybody's healthy and here. The minutes will reflect that we have a full board in attendance. And I will move to approve the minutes from the October 16th and October 19th board meeting if there is a second.
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 Thank you, Mr. Frost. Any questions or comments about those minutes? Hearing on all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will go on to Ms. Betty Edwards, to the determination of the validity of the provisional ballots and authorization to count those ballots for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election. I know Mr. Alto later last night sent us the report, and Betty, welcome.
Good morning to you all. Before you, you should have a copy of the provisional validation summary for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election. The registration department received 18,005 provisionals. There were 2,324 for early in-person voting, which included the nursing home and the jail voters. In addition, 15,681 that were cast on election day at the polling locations. We found that 15,709 of the provisionals received met all of the requirements for opening and tabulation. They include 624 that were valid due to the age pre-exception, 91 required for a matching date, and 330 were in the wrong precinct but the correct location. In regards to the age pre-exception, Cuyahoga County voters who were canceled as a result of the 2011, 2015, or 2019 supplemental process were to be reactivated as long as they did not register to vote in another county after the cancellation. We can go over to the 2020 presidential general election. Once again, the total number of ballots, 2,068. Election day, 13,641, for a total of 1,709. Total rejections as relates to early in person is 256. Okay. 40, for a grand total of 2,296. The lower portion of the summary lists the total rejections by category. Not registered, 1,304. And staff did utilize Norm Robbins' methodology as far as searching for voters before deeming them not to be registered anywhere in the state. Wrong precinct, wrong location, a total of.
I'm sorry. Betty, can Betty repeat that? She just faded in. She just faded out there a little bit.
In fact, can you hear me, Anna Jo?
I can hear you, but Betty faded out just a little bit as she was describing using Norm Robbins' methodology. Could she just repeat?
Pick up on that. Yeah, so if you could, do you just generally, what was it? I remember the technique.
Norm Robbins came up with a method of various ways of searching for voters, not only in our database, but statewide database. Checking for them by the first three letters of the last name, first three letters of the first checking for them by date of birth, by driver's license number, by social security number, by address. There's a list of about, I'd say 10 to 15 things, and staff did go through that methodology before we an individual.
Terrific. Does that answer your question, Ina Jo?
I just didn't hear that portion of Betty's report because the sound was fading in and out, but I appreciate the additional information about Norm's methodology. But yeah, I just heard, she kept, the sound was going out, that's all. She could just pick up where she left off, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, for wrong precinct, wrong location, there were 356. Those that voted absentee prior to election day, 158. We had a total of 128 empty envelopes. Those missing ID, total of 65. Missing address, total of 56. Missing date of birth, 43. Those with no signatures, 37. Those with non-matching signatures, also 37. No matching ID, 36. Voted absentee challenge, 29. There were 21 people who voted in the county. 20 of them had bad addresses, and all the ones with bad addresses did go through John Eddy and GIS. Final call on those. Those that had already, a total of 4, and 2 of them had no printed names. Now we can move over to the reasons for voting provisional. That's in your pie chart. It's broken down into the numbers on the pie chart. For outgoing and out of county provisional, this is when we're sending inquiries to other counties. We had a total of 886. For incoming out of county, these are counties that are sending us inquiries. We had a total of 1,294. Before we get to our final recommendations, we'd like to also refer you to the pie chart because there is a category called the others, which may include voters who did not bring proper identification, voters that were not found in the poll book, and voters who did not readily fit into one of the above categories. Conclusion, we're asking approval from the board to open and tabulate 15,709 provisionals and the 2,296 provisionals that were deemed invalid. We would like for them.
Terrific. I will move to authorize the count of provisional ballots from the November 3rd, 2020 presidential general election as set forth in our agenda and as narrated by Ms. Betty Edwards, manager of the registration department. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions, and this is more for my education, Betty.
Okay.
I get not registered. Voting wrong precinct, wrong location would this example be? And I was working the polls that day, so I approached these people. Sometimes they'd be in line in 2.5 hours and say, hey, and I went to Parma Heights where my polling location, but I'm still registered in North Royal. North Royalton because they were told to vote in Parma Heights. My understanding is that they should have voted in Parma Heights provisionally, provided some backup information, and we would have confirmed that they were registered in Royalton. We'll transfer that registration to Parma Heights to me. So is that an example of wrong precinct? That and being a poll worker is always ongoing training because some of these individuals have done this for the first time ever. Sometimes once every 4 years they do it. And I think that individual, that example I used, was given incorrect information. She should have stayed there. The beauty about the good part about that is, fortunately, the place she first did that didn't have a line. So she was able to go back and just get it back. You can understand the frustration of a voter after waiting 2.5 hours only to be told by me that she got the wrong advice. And then, so that's a training matter, I think, to some level. Okay, great. And And how does, you know, and there were people I would refer to a provisional table, you know, because of whatever reasons. And how do we get an empty envelope or missing address? I mean, is that again on us in training because we have people there looking at those saying, hey, you forgot your address? Or is that maybe an explanation?
Yeah, so, it is a training issue with a missing, because the poll workers are trained to verify each section of the provisional envelope, and there's even a tool that's an overlay that shows all the required sections.
Right, okay.
The empty envelope, is more when, in some cases, like a voter takes their ballot directly to the DS200 and stamps the ballot, or, soil and voids the ballot and still the poll workers don't void the envelope.
Don't void the envelope.
Yes.
Because you really develop a much deeper appreciation for this report when you're actually there working the poll location, processing people. I didn't work the provisional table, and you are very hairy during that process because we had a 2.5 hour line, and my goal was just to get individuals through as soon as possible so they weren't waiting as long. And we were fortunate in many locations. I know Mr. Arbolowski had some of the same challenges I did on election day, and I'm sure my other colleagues have seen that occur before. But thank you. I have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions for Ms. Edwards?
I just have a question and a comment. I'm sort of, you know, of the 2,296 provisionals we're rejecting, I mean, that more than half of those were people that weren't registered. So it's sort of, you know, interesting to me that seems like a big number. I guess when we look at historical data, it may not be, but, you know, just a little bit comforting that, you know, it seems to be that, you know, obviously registration's a different issue. People need to register to vote. But I mean, with the other categories, there's not too much rejection of provisionals outside that category. So it seemed to me to be a relatively good number. I did have a question though, on the Z category. Can you give an example of a voter who would not fit into one of the above categories? You know, I understand that Z is others, voters who didn't bring the proper ID to the polls, those that weren't found in the poll book. But what's an example of a voter that doesn't otherwise fit into our standard categories?
Oh, wow.
Well, I could add one item, Joe, and I know they noted it here, a voter who did not bring the proper ID to the polls. So I had an example of someone bringing a passport. And they were flabbergasted that it wouldn't be accepted, and I simply had to tell them that's the law in Ohio. But nevertheless, I had them vote provisionally because they wanted to vote. So that would be one example that I experienced.
This is Tony. I would say that the primary thing for Z is really the identification, because it's something where we have that provisional and we're like, well, there's no address change here. They actually were in the correct location. Why the heck did they do it? And more times than not, when you look at the face of the provisional envelope, you will see the form of ID placed on there is the last four of the Social Security versus like a driver's license number. So then that's where that assumption comes in, going, well, they didn't have anything. They did know the last four of their social. So this gave them that opportunity to vote, because we don't see anything else different for them. Not a name change, not an address change, or, you know, they requested an absentee and didn't return it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Edwards, and I know you and the staff are gonna get back to it for a busy day here, starting our official recount, so thank you. On to the approval of vouchers. I will move to approve the vouchers as set forth in our agenda, if there's a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Rondelau. Are there questions? Ms. Zusi is here. Questions concerning the vouchers? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay. I will ask, I have a few, Mr. Musson is here, and I know he had reached out to me last night. I reached out to the board members. he subsequently reached out to you all again. So, Mr. I am going to allow as a walk-on item this matter of the memorandum we received in late August, early September from Nora Poor, who's an assistant prosecuting attorney concerning the Cuyahoga County Internal Auditor's Office had us scheduled, us being the Board of Elections, for an audit. And our attorneys took a look at that and to see if there was in fact a conflict between state law and the desire of the internal auditor. And she wrote an opinion to us that I know, I'm sure our board members had a chance to review and read. I think Mr. Musson is here. I'm teeing this up to see if this board is in a position to waive that privilege for purposes of the internal audit committee meeting in December 3rd. And the prosecutor's office would like to share that opinion with that committee in requesting that they not commence with an internal audit of the county board, because we are controlled by the Secretary of State and the laws that govern operation. So having said that, Mr. Musson, did you want to add anything else?
Yes, and I apologize for raising this at such a late time in proximity to today's meeting. And there is no urgency. This is just as a part of a broader question that I'm trying to answer for the audit committee on whether the charter gives them the ability to perform internal auditing services for a number of other boards, commissions, and non-executive agencies, and whether they fit within other county departments, institutions, boards, commissions under the charter. And there's a question whether or not the Board of Elections fit within that charter definition of a county entity. And I would like to respond to them by providing the opinion that Nora Poor rendered for the board.
Okay. Just, are there any comments from the board members? I'm okay with making a motion to, waive the attorney-client privilege as it relates to Ms. Poor's legal opinion to this board. If there's a second.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Wondolowski, that'll, permit us to then discuss this. Are there any questions or comments my other board members would like to make in regards to the prosecutor's office request? As he points out, we're meeting again on the 18th. Of course, we could consider it then in 4 days, but we don't meet then, I don't believe, until sometime in December. So we have to make a decision by Wednesday if my board members would prefer to do that.
Or, Mr. Chairman, if I may defer until the new year. I again apologize for pushing this issue. I'm trying to satisfy another client in getting this out there. So I apologize for the position I'm putting in.
That's okay. I agree with the opinion. And if it helps the internal audit department in the county move their thoughts closer to what the opinion is, I'm more than happy to waive it. So that's why I made the motion. I know there's a second. So any other questions or comments?
I do have a comment, but I'll wait till it's on the sort of the substance of the motion and what's in the opinion, but I'll wait to see if we pass it. And then I would just like to make a request if I could.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the motion that's pending? Okay, hearing none, then all in favor of the motion to waive that privilege in regards to the legal opinion from Ms. Nora Poor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
You had some comments?
Yeah, I since the opinion, does make clear that, the county doesn't have, the auditors do not have jurisdiction to audit us, that we are subject to the Secretary of State's office. Can we get references? I'm asking our counsel to request that references that were apparently are in the risk assessment that's identified there be stricken. It sounds like they made conclusions that we were high risk or something like that, but we didn't even get an opportunity to participate in the questionnaires or interviews. And it seems to me they've drawn conclusions about our risk level or whatever without our involvement. And as a matter of fact, given the opinion, it's just, since they don't have the ability to audit us, I'm just wondering if we can ask the audit committee to have references, if it's permissible, have references to whatever risk assessment they've done or conclusions they've made about our unit as an agency, unit of the county government, that those be removed from their risk assessment. Can we make that request? It just seems to me if you don't have jurisdiction, we shouldn't have any language out there drawing any conclusions about our level of risk and all that kind of thing. So that's just my thought.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes, I'd be happy to relay that on behalf of the board that any kind of mention or discussion of the board be removed from their working papers.
And let me just clarify, thank you, Anna Jo. What I would even suggest is, Mr. Muscle, why don't you draft a letter for the director to sign and the board members copy?
Yeah.
And we'll work on that. I think that's probably a little more formal way to do it on behalf of the client. I think your request is reasonable. And just to make it clear to the public that may be listening, we welcome this board in a transparent way. Absolutely. And we received that from the Secretary of State's office. The conclusion of this opinion is simply that the Board of Elections is under direct control and answerable to the Secretary of State, not the Department of Internal Auditing for Cuyahoga County. That's the opinion as conclusion. And so that's the only reason this matters before us now. And we will follow through with your request, Ina Jo, and we'll make sure the board's copied. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Just to clarify, it just seems to me that we didn't even get an opportunity to participate. Not that we would, because we're not under their jurisdiction, but for them to draw conclusions about our level of risk and so forth without our participation and involvement seems to me to warrant that, we just not be included in that report that they're issuing. So thank you so much. I like the way we're going to handle it more formally, but thank you very much.
Terrific. Thank you. I do have I guess we're done with our agenda items. Any new business, Mr. Director Pilati, that you want to share with the board? I have a few questions, general questions, but I don't know if you had anything specific you want to comment on.
I think Chantil is just going to kind of take us through what happens between now and on Wednesday as we approach the official certification. So I want to kind of let everybody know what's involved in doing that, since we're on a expedited schedule for certification. And I know you have a few questions, and we can definitely address those. I think we'll give more of an oversight on the election when we are at our Wednesday's meeting. But at this point, some of the things we were going to comment on are actually some of the questions, Jeff, that we know that you wanted to, that you have for us.
Terrific. Okay, Ms. Soder, our Deputy Director, please.
Before I get into that official certification and the results, just a quick update on the payroll for election officials. That is going through its final proof today, and we should be sending the file on Monday, and hopefully the checks will then be cut on Thursday next week, and then go into the mail the beginning of the week after that. So it looks like everything is on schedule to have the holders paid prior to Wednesday.
Thank you.
As far as certification, right now, the registration department and 95 of our attempts that we used for absentee ballot opening are over at the warehouse ready to open the provisional ballots. So we will work tonight until all of those are open. Usually we take 2 days to do the provisional opening, but we're going to push to get it done in 1 day so the ballot department can begin scanning those ballots. For the official certification, we do have to process any ballots that haven't been counted first before we can do things like re-upload the memory stick. So that will take place today. The ballot department will focus on opening the post absentee ballots and begin scanning those, and also processing the curbside ballots that we received from Election Day. Sunday will be mostly spent on scanning the provisionals, and then we will begin to upload the Election Day sticks again and start doing our write-in report for the post absentee Election Day categories that we haven't tabulated yet. So Monday and Tuesday will spend doing a comparison and a reconciliation of ballots cast versus papers, and determine if we need to rescan any of the precincts from Election Day due to issues that we have with the DS200s. We did have to replace a couple on Election Day. So just as a reminder, we will probably not be able to produce the nice report prior to Wednesday's meeting. That will be done as soon as probably after the meeting's over and the next day.
a report will be prepared. It'll
Yes.
just be done
Yes.
at the conclusion of the
So-
certification.
Yes, on Wednesday, at the board meeting on the 18th, they will just be providing the results from our tabulation system, and then we will send and post the normal certification report that does the historical comparisons.
Okay. And just thank you for that summary. It is, so what I'm hearing is probably we'll be doing 10-hour days, our staff, from starting today through Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. And how are you staffed? You think you have enough temps and full-time there to get through it?
Yes, today is the first day, so we'll see if, I'm not sure as far as attendance of everyone, but they were temporary workers that we used during the preparation for the election. So I believe that everything, they did a training for the provisional opening while we were getting started here. So I believe that we have enough staff to go around.
And so the provisional opening will be done on the 5th floor and the counting and scanning on the 2nd floor?
Yes.
With the 850s?
Yes.
Terrific. Any other questions for Deputy Director Soder and my board members?
Just wanted to, just for clarification, so we have to complete our certification by 2 o'clock on Wednesday, but our report, the actual report that you're saying that we will get with our historical comparison and all that data will be provided after, is that what you're telling us?
Yes, I don't believe that the ballot department will have enough time to do the full report prior to this, so, prior to meeting on Wednesday.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and then just again, just for the public that's listening, typically we would meet sometime on the 24th of November, 21 days after the election, so we would have some more time to create these reports and do the official canvass. But because of the Secretary of State's directive, I believe it's 2023, all boards in the state are required to certify by the 18th. So everybody's on an expedited schedule, and that's why we're not going to have that report we usually enjoy. But it's we're certainly going to be ready. And in fact, we're not meeting till noon on Wednesday, and we got a report on 2:30 on Wednesday. So we're giving our staff as much time as possible to get that count done, which I'm sure they will. Any other questions?
Hey, Jeff, I just want to add one more thing to that process. At this point, then typically what happens is on certification morning, we will post up around 9:30 the results of the election. There's no guarantee that we'll be able to do that on this Wednesday because we just might still be working on that process. So I just want individuals to know that. So they may or may not. When we know, we can put something on our website indicating that we won't be able to do it until the meeting or whatever the fact pattern is come Wednesday.
Right. We will post at some point on Wednesday.
Oh, it's still, this thing's still going, so I can't bring the up or it's gonna cut it.
All right, we could put some people on mute there. Thank you. All right.
Yes, we will post probably just before the meeting starts.
Okay, but at some point we're going to post. Right. Okay. Thank you, Director Pilati. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one comment. I normally would reserve it for next week during the certification meeting, but I feel compelled to just commend the staff. It was a extraordinary election under extraordinary circumstances, and I just think, and I'm not surprised because can you hear me? Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because the guys rise to the occasion every election, whether it's a presidential or a small election, big election. And I just want to say how I appreciate the work ethic. I got so many compliments, people calling and texting. And, normally there's, a few gripes here and there about where's this, where's that, how come this? But overall, there were many, many, many positive comments that I received with people just saying that, the process was well thought through, that, great attention, that the staff was customer friendly, that there was a spirit of collegiality and it was democracy in process. And I just felt so proud. And, and I immediately said, hey, I would like to take the credit, but I can't. These folks work extraordinary hours and are so dedicated, and even our temporary workers as well. So I just felt like, I could wait till next week, but so many great comments during this election process, and I wanted to publicly thank our staff and all of our temporary workers, but really amazing job, and kudos to you, and thank you for all of your efforts. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Chappelle. I have a few questions, and I'm not asking to go into great detail, just very briefly. If you can just give a brief summary, either to Director Soder, Deputy Director Soder, or Mr. Pilati. We've had, I think if I read correctly, there have been 4 PEOs that have reported signs of COVID. They were poll workers. I don't know if they received it when they were poll workers or they received, the unfortunate diagnosis afterwards. But we've been very transparent in announcing that. I guess, what summary, what protocol are we following very briefly in regards to that? How we approaching that?
You want me to
So
take that,
we-
Chantel, or you got it?
You can go ahead.
Okay, so we are trying to be very transparent with that. And what we've worked with both the Cuyahoga County Board of Health and the City of Cleveland Public Health Department when we became aware of these situations. And what we do is when we get notified of a positive test from a PEO, what we do is we gather the names and phone numbers, contact information for all the precinct election officials who worked in that location on election day. We provide that information to the public health officials, who they then start their process. It starts with first the actual individual themselves who tested positive, conducting an interview with them to try to find out just whatever information they need to know so they can do their contact tracing, as well as having that information available if they do need to contact the other PEOs in the polling location. Part of that is we also then, our staff internally, we put a call out to the precinct election officials in that location just to make them aware that there was a positive test and that they may be contacted by the Board of Health for contact tracing, but there's no guarantee on that. We also, if we can't get a hold of individuals after we make our phone calls, we do send out an email to all the individuals who worked in that location on the day, again, to give them a heads up. We also reach out to the polling location itself, to the administrators there, so they are aware of it in case they want to take any additional action at their polling location. And we make we had observers out in polling locations, so we reach out to the entities who had the observers, and we make, so whether it's the Republican or Democratic state or county parties, basically, and we make them aware of the polling location in which there was a positive test and what the date of that positive test is. So then they can go ahead and reach out to, for lack of a better term, their staff, being the observers, to make them aware of what's going on. We have put out a couple of press releases notifying individuals or the public of that. But what we're going to do now is we're transitioning. We're creating a dashboard to put on our website, where we will just report on our website any location and where there is a positive test and the date of that positive test. We need to continue to do that through, I believe it's Wednesday, through a certification date, because that'll be the 14-day window that is often associated with quarantining for the pandemic. And then once we get past that point in time, I believe the reporting of that or the likelihood that COVID was contracted at the polling location, it really diminishes. We did have all of our safety procedures in effect. We had all the PPE and all the things that we've talked about, social distancing and done all those things. We did provide thermometers to every polling location on election day. We did not take the temperatures of the voters, but we did take the temperatures of our precinct election officials on Monday when they arrived for the Monday night organizational meeting, as well as on Tuesday morning before we started the voting process for the voters. So we did not have any reports of individuals having a temperature or symptomatic on either Monday or Tuesday, which is a good thing. And what we're not doing is, I know the media has asked, or at least one media outlet, for us to name names of who the person is. In working with public health, out of respect for the privacy of those individuals, we will not be publishing those names. Our expectation is when someone is hired as precinct election official, they are trained for all jobs in the polling location. And quite honestly, oftentimes they do rotate through, whether it's for breaks and lunches or whether it's just to break up the day a little bit. So there's not necessarily one place where they may be pinpointed. As far as the voters are concerned, again, with guidance from public health officials, other than letting the public know the location in which there was a positive test, we do not reach out to each individual voter themselves, but they are made aware again through previously through press releases, and now it'll be through dashboards. And so that's kind of how we have addressed that situation. And that, again, is working closely with both the County Public Health and the City of Cleveland Public Health, or County Board of Health and Cleveland Public Health Departments, to make sure that we get the word out quickly, appropriately, and again, and respecting the privacy of those individuals who unfortunately have contracted the virus.
Thank you, Director Pilati. Any questions for the Director? Okay, hearing none, another question I had, I guess I just want to reaffirm, they've been reporting about some long lines. I think our comments, yours, Director Pilati, Director Soder, Mr. West, and in one word can be summed up because of COVID. And then there are many other reasons beneath COVID, having to consolidate precincts, having to social distance, and where we had 100 voting booths, we had 50. I guess I just want, is this a matter that staff will be looking at in depth at lessons learned once certify and do all we need to do?
We will be doing an in-depth look at all of the locations, specifically the ones that were reported to have long lines or needed additional equipment delivered out there on election day. So that will probably start to take place after the post-election audit and voter history is complete, and we will report back to the board as soon as that analysis is done.
Terrific. And whenever that is appropriate, it's no rush. We don't have another big election until, of course, we got a primary in March or May of this year, local elections. But yes, if you could give us a report back to the, this is why the problems occurred. This is what we'll go do going forward to avoid that. So thank you. Any other questions for the board concerning that matter? All right, and again, how was our PEO turnout on election day? Did we have enough backups, et cetera, that sort of thing?
We did have enough backups. We switched the system from our voter registration system that has a poll worker module to an internal program that we have to track the number of individuals that call off starting on Thursday before the election. And from Thursday afternoon all the way through election day, we had 409 individuals call off. We typically have that going into the Monday night organizational meeting. So before we even get to Monday night and Tuesday, we have, so it was actually a pretty reasonable number, actually lower than we anticipated. We had a sufficient amount of standby workers available, and they were dispatched to all of the that required additional workers.
So nothing unusual, even despite the pandemic, about 1% call off, a little higher?
Yes, and I'd say that it's a lot lower than we typically see in a countywide election.
Excuse me, probably closer to 10% call off, not a 1%. It's still not unusual.
No.
All right, okay. Any questions for the board on that matter? Okay, and finally, on election night, we were all down there, board members, but staff was there to the very bitter end. Did we have any unusual slowdowns or problems that occurred that evening, or memory sticks that we had to scramble and find?
So we had all of the memory sticks accounted for in the evening. I believe that we start every election, we do a reconciliation between the number of signatures that voters who have checked in against the number of ballots cast at a location, just to see if we can determine, typically within that, like a standard deviation, if there's outliers that looks like the results that be read in correctly. So this election, we did have a few more precincts that we had to look into due to curbside ballots, which were really popular in some polling locations and not popular at all in others. So it was there was not a trend across the county. So we did go through and verify all of those numbers. We also had to rescan, I believe, 5 precincts on election night in the 850s due to DS200 issues out of the polling locations. So
That slowed us down a little
yes,
bit too.
yeah.
Great. Any other questions from the Director Pilati or Deputy Director Soder on that matter?
I have one on just in terms of follow-up, because you've now mentioned we had problems with the scanners a couple times. Did we have significant equipment problems that we needed to elevate to the attention of the vendor or what? I'm only asking because you've said it a couple times. We had some problems with the scanners.
We had 4 individuals from ESMS here on site with us on election day helping troubleshoot issues. So they're aware and actually handled most of the calls that came in. I don't believe that there were any major issues with DS200s. It's typical to have to rescan a few precincts on election night due to DS200 issues. There was in the beginning of the day a higher report of ballot jams at the polls. And we got a message out to all of our PEOs poll book and started to make calls to our command center and all the operators answering the phone to remind the voters to fold the stuff back and forth and then tear across the perforated line, because sometimes what happens is like a jagged edge on the stub can cause more ballot jams. So
That could have cost.
But did we have to replace? Did we have to replace any of the units because they were not operative, or what?
We replaced 3 units, and I believe we took an additional 3 out of service on election day. And again, I think that that's typical for a countywide election in the past couple of years.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would say that I don't think it was anything greater than what we've seen in the past. What's kind of interesting is that we did think that there was the issue with the stub with tearing, and there might have been some of that. But at the end of the night, as we started to look through the soiled and defaced envelopes, what became very interesting is that a couple of the jams that we were witnessing were because people actually didn't take their stub off, and the ballot was too long, and then it kind of got jammed as it was trying to return to us. And that's something that we really haven't seen before. And one guess that we have is we did have about 70% new poll workers out there who worked really hard, but I think maybe they didn't realize, hey, you have to take the stub off. So, which is not that you want any kind of issue, but at least it was like, oh, okay, that was something that is fixable. Just make sure that we get the stub off the ballot.
I just, again, a comment that when I was out in the field, so once you scan somebody and you turn around and say 1A, you have these poll workers behind you with the ballots, and they were making a point of flipping up the tabs before they gave it to me, so they were ready to get off, kind of preparing them, which is commendable because that helps it. And the spoiled ballots I got, I can remember 3 or 4, they were all of as a result of a tab not being perforated. And it may well have been the voters' issue, not just ripping it off correctly. So I understand how those machines can get backed up because of that. And just with the sheer volume of 500,000 votes being cast, well, at least 200 and 300,000 on election, you're going to have a few that'll have that problem. Thank you. Any other questions for the director, deputy, and board members? Hearing none, I do we have someone that wants to address the our board here, Mr. Andres Serrato. Mr. Serrato, if you want to approach here, please, sir. We have a public comment section. Thank you. You can take that off as you get to the mic, sir. And we have 5 minutes that you can address the board on, sir, please. And the board members are here listening.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Chairman Pilati, for making this possible for me to be here. The issues that I'm going to discuss refer to a precinct formerly known as Moreland Hills -00-A, parentheses 18-P-D as in David, V as in boy, V as in victory. In short, I was a worker for one of the parties. At the close of the night, I was, after a day-long battle as to my ability to inspect and observe, we reached an agreement that I would be able to observe and witness the closing of the voting machines. The voting machines were serial numbers, I'm sorry, the chips that were removed from those machines. There were 5 machines. I'll skip the numbers in the interest of time. I saw the printouts come out. I saw the printouts. One went obviously the board, and the other one was supposed to be published immediately after closing of the process. Again, in the interest of time, only 3 of the 5 were posted. That accounted for 752 votes. My understanding, my informal understanding, was that there were over 1,300 votes cast at this precinct. So somewhere north of 400 votes. The results, the tabulations, again, 2 of the machines were not posted, even though the group of workers, everybody was locked into a room, literally locked into the gym of this high school, while they posted the results. That's at the heart of what I wanted to say. I wanted to make this board aware of.
Well, thank you, Mr. Serrano. So just to hear you correctly, the results were run off on all the machines, but only 3 of the machines, they actually posted the results there.
That's correct.
I see. Okay.
That's correct. And then actually, I woke up in the morning, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe there's another door. Yeah, and they posted the other door. I went to the high school at 6 o'clock in the morning to make sure that I hadn't made that I wasn't in error. There were 3 doors that could have been possibly used for that purpose. None of them had any others. So there's only 3 results posted. I took a that which I believe I sent to Chairman.
The director provided.
To the director. Yeah. Sorry. I believe I did, but anyways, I have it. And that was in daylight about 9 a.m. on the 4th.
Well, thank you. It sounds like it could have been a poll worker error, and I'm sure our staff will look into that because it's required, I believe, at 11 and 4 o'clock and at closing to post those. In fact, I did it, and one of the challenges I had at my location was the windows weren't long enough. So what you had to do, you had to like rip the results in half and post them next to each other so they could fit. I'm not saying that was the issue where you were, but they need to be posted. We'll look into that.
Yes, that wasn't an issue. It's a very large window. Actually, the midday tabulations were posted, like you said, cut off.
Right.
Yeah, in a wall, in an internal wall.
Right.
These ones were not.
Right. Okay. Well, I thank you for coming. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
One more silly detail, but the law says 100 feet radius around the perimeter of the voting precinct.
Mm-hmm.
This precinct was marked, I believe, 300 if not 350 feet.
Okay.
Okay, which again, if it's not the letter of the law, is it really in the spirit of the law?
Well,
But that's a minor issue, has to do with geography, I imagine, but if it says 100 feet, it's 100 feet.
Absolutely, sir. I appreciate you coming out on election day to observe for your part.
That was my first rodeo, and I loved it.
Well, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for coming down. Is there any other public comment we have today? I think we'll continue to remain in recess. I would like, although, and maybe we want to change this, I would like to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters concerning possible discipline, if there's a second for that. What I was thinking of doing is doing a conference call with y'all, if possible, if there's a second.
Second, and you can conference me and that'd be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Same here, please. Same here.
Mr.
Yep, that's fine.
I've made a motion. Is there a second?
Yes, I second it.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Frost,
Yes.
Ms. Chappelle,
Yes.
Mr. Wondolowski,
Yes.
Hastings is yes. Okay, we're gonna go into executive session and we don't have any other business matters, so staff isn't necessary to be here. But thank you, and then we'll go back into recess and convene again on Wednesday.
Jeff, just
Thank-
to be clear, Jeff, you'll be calling us?
What I'm gonna do is call two of you, so I can use my phone, and then we'll have one of you call into a
Oh,
landline. So we can all
yeah,
talk.
that'll be great. I'll call your phone, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll call you all. You all can hang up, and then I'll call you all and tell one of you to call in the hard line, okay?
That'll be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, you know? No, we're fine.
Let's get out of here then, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for.
Oh, no.